A bold call for action. It's time to tax the polluters and support the nations most affected by climate change. The world's governments are being urged to consider new taxes on the super-rich and highly polluting industries to raise funds for climate finance, especially for poorer countries. This proposal, outlined in the Baku to Belém roadmap, is a powerful intervention by the governments of Brazil and Azerbaijan, the current and former presidents of the UN climate COP process. The roadmap suggests experimenting with voluntary partnerships between countries, targeting sectors with high pollution and greenhouse gas emissions, financial transactions, and even taxing ultra-wealthy individuals. However, it also cautions against potential negative impacts on development and trade. But here's the controversial part. While campaigners like Rebecca Newsom from Greenpeace International welcome this approach, citing the vast profits of fossil fuel giants, some may argue that such taxes could hinder economic growth and development. World leaders are gathering in Belém, Brazil, to discuss this very issue before the UN COP30 summit. The roadmap aims to bridge the gap between rich and poor nations, with a goal of providing £1.3 trillion annually to developing countries by 2035. And this is the part most people miss. Last year's COP29 in Baku set this ambitious target, but rich countries pledged only a fraction of the total sum, leaving a significant gap to be filled by potential new taxes and private sector contributions. According to Mukhtar Baybayev, the Azerbaijani minister and former president of COP29, the roadmap shows a clear path to scaling up climate finance, but it requires political will and global action. He emphasizes that without adequate financing, countries cannot meet their climate goals. The roadmap also highlights the need for debt relief for developing nations, potentially through debt for climate swaps, and easier access to private sector capital for clean energy investments. A critical point, the report stresses the importance of equity and social impacts during the transition to clean energy. Without addressing these issues, there's a risk of increasing inequality and slowing down climate action. However, with President Trump dismantling much of U.S. overseas aid and other countries cutting their aid budgets, finding the necessary capital for replenishment of multilateral development banks may be challenging. Campaigners, including Carolina Pasquale from Greenpeace Brazil, emphasize that rich governments must step up their support for poorer nations to avoid the worst impacts of the climate crisis. So, what do you think? Is taxing the super-rich and polluters a fair and effective way to address climate finance? Or are there potential drawbacks that could hinder progress? Let's discuss in the comments.